Right. Good evening, everyone in the room and joining us virtually. There's a camera right there. Emily is a colleague in the room here who works in communications. And I'm looking over to her right now to see. Yeah, say hi, Emily. To check in to see how things are online. How many people have joined us online, Emily? Okay, so we have 37 folks online, and I imagine that number is going to continue to ebb and flow through the evening. And there are all of you here in the room this evening, and you're on the camera. You're on cameras as well. Folks can see you online, not just me, depending on the camera angle we're choosing, just so you know. And I'm using this mic for you in the room, but we have microphones on these walls that are going to pick up everything you say at some point in the evening when you're talking. So you want to know that, but yeah, there are no secrets tonight. All right. So I'm Christian Mishlik, Mahalik, Misharik. It all depends on how you identify. If you're Polish, the name is Polish, and you'd say Mahalik. If you're French, you'd say Misharik. And if you're English speaking, you'd say Mishlik. And it all works. And I'm the superintendent in the school division. I have this amazing privilege of occupying that role and taking on those responsibilities. And I try really hard to do my best in the role and taking on responsibilities. So typically, the chair of the board would be starting us off this evening. The chair is Chris Sigurdsson, but he's on his way. His plane has just landed, and he's going to make it here soon, and join us and take part in presenting. So on his behalf, I'm going to walk us through the first few slides, if you allow. So we always start with a land acknowledgement in this space. The folks who are most often in this space that I hang out with are the principals and vice principals in LRSD. We come together in this room once a month. And we start our learning together once a month with our land acknowledgement. But what we are doing is not just reading the words that all of you here in the room and online can read. What we do is we ask of each other to talk about our relationship to the land acknowledgement. And so I thought I'd do that again. I've done it a few times. And I'm just speaking from the heart. I have nothing prepared because I hadn't anticipated being at the front this soon in the evening. And so it's about the relationship to the land. And so Mahalik, this is my father's last name. So my dad is a newcomer, was a newcomer. He's passed. But he came to Canada in the mid-1950s as a young man in his 20s. He came from France. And my grandparents, his parents, were newcomers to France. Between the world wars, they had lost everything and had to find, were war refugees and had to find a new home. And so when I read this land acknowledgement from my father's perspective, my heritage on my father's side, what I have to acknowledge is how grateful I am that my dad decided to come to Canada to start a life as a young man, and I want to acknowledge on his behalf and on my own behalf that he had it easy. In that he came to a land that was very generous in welcoming him, despite the fact that he didn't know any English. He only spoke French and Polish. It was a very welcoming place. And the truth of this land acknowledgement is that we're acknowledging just how cruel and unfair on this journey of creating an identity as a nation we've been to the people who were here, whose land we occupy. And we're on a journey taking the very first baby steps to reconciling ourselves to that hard truth. And it's at the core of our journey in LRSD. So we have 9 trustees, and our vice chair, Darlene Garrier, wishes she could be here, but she's had to step away for a little while, and she sends us her best wishes. As I've observed, our chair has just landed and is on his way. And so in the room, we have Pamela Kolachuk. If trustees could stand when I call out their name. We have Sandy Nemeth, Irene Nordheim, Ryan Palmquist.
Sent regrets.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Thanks for that. And I'm sorry, Ryan, that I hadn't picked up on that bit of information. Ryan isn't able to be with us this evening. Trustee Chapalo Simagnola is on his way. Cindy Turner regrets that Cindy couldn't be here this evening, and I see Ian Walker's here. Okay, I'd also like to welcome. I did say Irene. Did I welcome you, Irene?
Yes, but thank you for doing it again.
I know. Jamie didn't hear me, and he was whispering to me, Irene, don't forget Irene.
Possible, actually.
So we have members of the senior leadership team here as well. They're not in the picture, so I'm going to ask them to stand. A guy who's going to do a lot of the talking, because we're talking budget, is our Secretary Treasurer, Jamie Rudnicki. Jamie has a colleague who helps out a lot, Assistant Secretary Treasurer Vanessa Ross. We all help out a lot, even though we're not accountants. Jeff, when it comes to the budget and all kinds of things. Jeff Anderson, Assistant Superintendent. I'm expecting applause every time I say a name. Ron Cadez, Assistant Superintendent. Darcy Cormack, Assistant Superintendent. And Michelle Jean-Paul. Michel Jean-Paul, Assistant Superintendent. Saw a fellow up here helping with technology, but he's a lot more than just technology. And a pretty face, Director of Information Technology Services, Clark Hagan. He's out back. We have a Director of School and Classroom Supports, Corey Kapalik. And an Assistant Director of Staff Services in the room, Derek Sheldon. And a Vice Principal of Indigenous Education, Kelsey Langahan. Langahan, did I say that well, Kelsey? Langahan. I also see some special guests in the room. You're all special guests, but we have Billy Cross. I saw Billy, MLA for Seine River. Hi, Billy. Mike Moyes, MLA for Riel and Minister. Congratulations. Brian Mays, City Councillor. Brian's a great friend of LRSD. Anyone else? Any other politicians that? Because essentially, it's an evening of politics and economics. We have locally elected trustees sharing their budget, and that can't happen without the collaboration the essential collaboration with the provincial government and the important collaborations with a city government and a federal government. And we have some local journalists joining us. I just talked to someone from La Liberté. C'est-tu Lucille? Hello, Lucille. And Maggie McIntosh is either in the room or online. Hi, Maggie. And all right, let's get started. You're all important. And if I could name each and every one of you individually, I would, but we'd be here until tomorrow morning. So when thinking of a budget, ideally a budget is an expression of what we value and the goals we've set to bring those values to life. And so we express our values in the form of a vision statement, a mission statement, a motto. We also express that those values here in LRSD in the form of a multi-year strategic plan. And tonight, we're talking about how all of that expresses itself monetarily, expresses itself in a budget. So we're going to start by just familiarizing you briefly with the multi-year strategic plan. I'll continue on that. Again, our chair would have loved to have been the one to speak to these elements of the presentation this evening. Then we'll have our Secretary Treasurer share about our funding for next year and what we are going to do with that funding in the form of a draft budget next year. I'll come back this time as Superintendent and CEO, not on behalf of anyone, to share about beyond the MYSB, other really important information that has been at the heart of the conversation with trustees relative to building a budget since November. And that is the thought exchange we launched in November. We've been looking at it ever since, and I'll share the results. And so a thought exchange is, for folks joining us that aren't so sure, didn't get into the thought exchange, is essentially a survey. So we've surveyed community about priorities they have for the budget and other data that has been at the heart of the conversation. And then we'll leave it for some questions at the end. So the strategic plan is one very important document at the heart of the budget deliberations. And our strategic plan, as you can observe on the screen here and at home, is very explicitly saying we are on a journey of truth and reconciliation in LRSD, and that for all of us, whether our origins are Polish and French Canadian, as are mine, or any other origin that is the rich diversity that makes up our community and our nation, because we are on this journey of truth and reconciliation, Indigenous perspectives, Indigenous worldviews are at the heart of each and everyone's journey of transformation, and at the heart of the journey in LRSD. And so you can learn more about that multi-year strategic plan that we're very proud of. It's 25 strategic actions that we are going to learn about how they express themselves relative to investments in 25-26. So I'm going to hand it off to our Secretary Treasurer. And he's mic'd up.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay out there? Project, okay. I can do that. Oh, just one important thing, the difference between last year and this year is I've lost my eyesight, so I have not one, but two pairs of glasses. So, yeah, how this goes. So welcome everyone to our public consultation meeting for our budget for the 2025-2026 school year. As Superintendent Mishlik has said, my name is Jamie Rudinke. I'm the Secretary Treasurer for the Riel School Division. And so I'm going to today present to you our draft budget or our proposed budget for the year. I'm going to look at it or talk about it at a high level, and then I'll go a little bit more granular. So for next year, we are proposing a balanced budget. And the proposed budget for next year is $247,005,146, which represents a $27 million increase from this current school year, or a 10.93% increase. And so, as you can see from the funding portion, we received our funding announcement from the province of Manitoba a couple of weeks ago, and that announcement was for $116,905,078, an increase of 2.8%, or 2.46% increase. In addition to the operating grants that we receive from the province, we also get other grants. And that total is $6.2 million for next year projected, a slight increase of $19,602, or 0.32% increase. We're proposing a local increase from municipal levies of a total of $145,813,679, a $24.2 million increase, or 19.93%, and then all funding outside of the provincial and local dollars that we receive is proposed at $5,078,565, a slight decrease of $55,534, or a decrease of 1.08%. And so that total funding comes to that $274,005,146. On the other side of the ledger, essentially, are costs of the division, which are essentially two big buckets, as I call them. One is staffing and one is operating. And so the proposed budget for staffing for next year is $228,014,856, $20.6 million projected increase, or a 9.96% increase from this current year. In our operating, we are proposing a $45.9 million budget for next year, an increase of $6.3 million, or 16.04%. So I'm going to get into a little bit more detail as to what makes up the cost portion of our budget. And so, as I mentioned, we have two buckets. We have our staffing and our operating. And so, as you can see, our staffing accounts for 83.2% of our budget. The other 16.8% is the operating side. So that's the stuff and things that it takes to support students and learning. Drilling down a little further, I'll talk about our operating, and we're proposing a $45.9 million increase. And specifically, I've broken it out into four main areas. The first is our maintenance and infrastructure costs. We are proposing a $15,492,600 budget for next year. That is an increase of $1.26 million, or an 8.86% increase. And so, in the Riel School Division, we truly believe that every student and staff member deserve a high-quality learning and working environment. Our school buildings are more than just structures. They are the foundation of student success, well-being, and community engagement. Modernizing our aging facilities is not just about maintenance, it's also about equity. Ensuring safe, comfortable, and accessible spaces allows all learners to thrive regardless of where they attend school. So to support this commitment, we are increasing the maintenance and infrastructure budget by $1.2 million. And this aligns with our Strategic Action 4.1. So specific to this increase, we are proposing investments to include a 6-year plan to retrofit the remaining 10 schools in our division without air conditioning. The proposed air conditioning refresh budget for next year is going to start out at $630,000. As we continue to try to modernize our buildings, there are increased costs of maintaining our aging buildings, and so there are natural increases to infrastructure. As a result, we are increasing our budget by $200,000 to maintain ventilation systems, $120,000 in additional funds to to replace aging piping or plumbing, $80,000 to address accessibility in our schools, $80,000 to maintain and repair boiler systems, and the remaining increase are accounted for with increase in inflation. The next portion of the operating budget is our transportation costs. And so the proposed budget for next year is $5,516,341, an increase of $329,959. And this represents a 6.36% increase. This increase is strictly attributed to the contractual obligation that we have with our third-party busing provider for students. So these are contractual increases in our agreement. The third main bucket of operating costs is our student supplies and support. And so next year, we're proposing an increase, or we're proposing a budget of $21,196,883. That's an increase of $982,473, or 4.86%. So the main increases in those budgets for next year is that we've identified that we would like to enhance our cybersecurity for the division, and so we are allocating a budget of $250,000. In addition, we are allocating an additional $241,000 to school operating budgets, and this is to account for the increase in enrollment for next year. In addition, we are allocating an additional $101,000 in our industrial arts and human ecology programming, and this is to account for inflationary pressures that those departments are experiencing. So to continue with purchasing the supplies, we need to increase their budgets. In addition, we are adding an additional $100,000, and this is to expand our LRFC Community Schools Network. We currently have a location at Riel Arts Center, and we are actually going to expand that program to Nelson McIntyre Collegiate to service the northern part of the division. In addition to that, $100,000 is being allocated for the pilot project of our swimming program, as well as an additional $98,000 to address to enhance additional numeracy and literacy supports. So that accounts for the increase in next year for the student supplies and supports. The other costs that we need to budget for is the new school, and these are one-time costs. So as our community knows, we have a new school that's going to be in operations in September. It's going to be a French immersion kindergarten to grade 8 elementary school that services the communities of Sage Creek and Bonavista Vista. And costs outside of provincial funding are needed to fill the schools. So items that aren't covered through provincial funding are furniture and fixtures, so all the furniture in classrooms, administrative offices, and commons areas. Technology, we need to install fiber optic cables, computer hardware, laptops, projectors, learning materials such as library books, music equipment, phys ed equipment, industrial arts and human ecology equipment, as well as classroom materials. In addition, we have to also put in some landscaping and parking lot costs. And so with this, our proposed budget, like I said, is $45.9 million, an increase of $6.3 million. In addition, built into these budgets are other costs, such as our goal to enhance and expand our therapeutic spaces at the Monterey Board Office, as well as making incremental progress to expand our Indigenous land-based educational spaces. So now that I've talked about the small bucket, the stuff and things, the operating costs, I'd like to now turn our attention to the staffing costs, which, like I said, are 83.2% of our budget, a proposed budget of $228,014,856. So when we drill down into what that is made up of, we have teaching staff. Proposed budget for next year is $164,944,794. This is an increase of $16.7 million or 11.26% increase. Our teaching staff for next year is going to be a staff complement of 1,312.44 full-time equivalents. On the non-teaching staffing, our proposed budget for next year is $63,070,062. That is an increase of about $4 million or 6.69%. So to drill down a little bit, and the staff complement is going to be 1,103.56 full-time equivalents. And so kind of to drill down a little bit more on the teaching staff, what does that increase entail? First, we are adding an additional 44.55 teacher full-time equivalents. This is to address increased enrollment for next year, maintain our current class sizes, and also increase supports, specifically adding additional student services teachers and clinicians to increase due to increasing student needs. We are adding an additional teacher on the Indigenous education team to support expansion of the language program. We are adding teacher librarians as well as instructional support teachers to support and build teacher capacity. So in addition to the 44.55 FTE teachers, we also have to account for the teacher collective bargaining agreement that was negotiated between the Manitoba government and the Manitoba Teacher Society. And so there is an added cost. But before I get into the added costs, I just would like to say that we are very fortunate in our province and in our country on how we see education and how important it is. And so we are very grateful for all of our staff teaching and non-teaching. So when I say cost, it's, to me, I look at it as investment. And so the additional increase in salary costs for next year for teaching is a 3% increase in September, in addition to a 1% increase in February of 2026. So when you layer in the additional FTE count and the contractual obligation from the collective bargaining agreement, the last piece is just the natural step in class increases of teachers. The proposed budget increase comes to $16.7 million or 11.26% increase. Shifting to non-teaching staff, our proposed increase of about $4 million is accounted for in this way. We are proposing an additional 31.81 non-teaching full-time equivalents. That includes educational assistance support to support students and teachers in the classrooms, additional school clerical, custodial, and maintenance workers, and this is to address the increase in enrollment as well as the operationalizing of our new school. In addition, we are adding an Indigenous elder to support student and staff as part of our journey of addressing reconciliation. And as well, the last piece in this cost estimate is the estimated provision for salary increases for our non-teaching staff that are currently working without a collective agreement this year. So that kind of gives an overview of where our costs are for this year. And so just as a summary, like I said, we're proposing a balanced budget, total budget of $274,505,146 or $27 million increase. And how does that translate into tax increase for this year to help support this balanced budget? So with the proposed budget that I've described as addressing increasing enrollment, growing current and pending salary obligations, and student needs, you will see from this graph that we are proposing a 6.43% increase in our mill rate. When we look at those two buckets and how that maps onto the proposed increase, 4.39% of the 6.43% will go to cover staffing costs that I talked about, that $20 million increase. And then on the operating side, 0.82% are for the annual operating costs that we incur, and the remaining 1.22% of that 6.43 is to address the one-time costs that we need to incur to fill our school to operationalize it. So based on an average value of a property in our catchment of $422,500, the increase results in an additional $193 on school taxes, or $16.08 per month. I would like to now pass it over to Superintendent Mitchell to discuss feedback from the community we received through thought exchange, discuss data we use to inform decisions regarding student supports and needs of the division, and talk more in depth about the proposed staffing increases, air conditioning refresh, cybersecurity, and swimming program that's been included in this year's budget. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jamie. So everyone in this room, I suspect, and folks online and many more have contributed to the design of this draft budget through a thought exchange that has been open to the community since November. And since November, 1,304 people have responded to the survey, and 1,235 of those folks engaged fully with the survey. And we can see the breakdown. We had so in actual fact, more than those numbers participated, and I'll explain right away by giving some context to that student number. So the data suggests only 139 students participated in the survey, but that's misrepresenting what actually has occurred. For the most part, the students engaged as a classroom. And so the number is actually much higher relative to student participation. Staff represents 39% of those who responded, parents and guardians 43%, and community members who don't necessarily have a relationship as a family member. In some instances, yes, but in other instances, no. Participated as well. 18% of the participation rate are folks that aren't necessarily connected through family to the school, but are community members, whether they live in LRSD or not. Again, the survey was open to anyone. And so when we look at an analysis of the data that was provided to us independently, class size was a broad theme for folks. The importance of maintaining class size. For some, it's about reducing class size. And so the dilemma here is, as hard as we're working to maintain a class size that is conducive to learning, there are instances where a teacher may be in front of a group of students that is larger than that average class size that we're achieving. And so for them, they want to see a reduction. The other broad theme was support. And what resonated most was the need for more educational assistance, but it wasn't the only support being identified. The need for more specialized supports in the way of psychologists, social worker, speech pathologists, occupational therapists, all folks that are already in our system, the need for more of that expertise to support teachers was made loud and clear. Another theme was broadly more opportunities for kids to have to grow their skills, their life skills in the way of healthy living habits, and it expressed itself in this one instance specific to swimming lessons, but there were many ideas. The one that resonated the most was swimming, but other thoughts around healthy living skills, opportunities for that to express itself. Engagement with sports also was what were shared, and how important developing these healthy living habits are to one's wellness and one's learning. And finally, another broad theme was the need for investments in infrastructure. So what we have happening in LRSD and that we have happening across the city, province, country, and the world is an aging infrastructure. So my dad, a generation past, my mom, my grandparents, I'm going here as I started my land acknowledgement, acknowledging my heritage. What I can observe, these were generations that worked really hard and found the courage to build what we have the luxury of enjoying right now. And we're going to have to find the courage and the wherewithal to look after it all and to do more, because we can. And so what's resonating loud and clear in our community is there's an inequity. If you happen to live in a new neighborhood, you're going to enjoy a brand new school. But if you live in any other neighborhood, your school is getting older by the day. And we need to look after it, because that learning space is a teacher, has an impact on one's learning and one's ability to teach. And if equity is one of the values we hold dear, and it is in LRSD, and I believe it is in Manitoba and in Canada, it expresses itself in our Charter of Rights, then we need to make investments, and fast, because the problem's only getting worse. And so that's what our community is telling us. And it's why our Secretary Treasurer shared with you the details of our budget for next year, the reasons for the increases. And I'm going to expand on that. But before I do, although opinion matters a lot, people's lived experience matters, and we value this survey information. We look to other data to inform our decision-making, our deliberations when we are creating a budget, when we're building a budget. And the we here is a board of 9 trustees supported by their senior leadership team. So since November, we've been having many a conversation about the budget for next year. And class size is one important piece of data. So this is our class size tracker. It's available to anyone in this room and online, anyone in the world, and it's interactive. I'm not going to interact with it this evening, but we're very bold and audacious, because it doesn't take much to go red and be alerted that we have a problem. Our average class size in K-3 as of today at 4:30 is 20.7 students. And it's already red, because it's over 20 by 0.7. That's how seriously we take it all. And our average class size in grades 4 to 8 is 23.5. Our the number that has us worried, if it went over that number, we'd see red, is 25. But of course, we can see how that expresses itself across the grades and across the schools, and over time makes for an imperfect world. We can still do better. And so in the budget, is an incremental investment to trying to do better by this target. A target set by the province of Manitoba for schools, a target we've set for ourselves. Now, I'm often talking about class size grades K to 8. And it's oddly, I don't get much of I'm expecting the feedback. I'm expecting people to tell me, so what about our high schools? Why aren't we tracking class size in our high schools? One of the reasons we don't track class size in our high schools is because it's not easy. Because high schools look very different from elementary schools in that typically in a high school, many teachers are responsible collectively for a young person's journey. And that journey becomes one of greater autonomy and independence for the learner, as it should be. But so then it gets challenging. How does one express class size grades 9 to 12? So here, what we have are student to staff ratios that we look at in LRSD. And so I'm not going to get interactive too much with this. I'm just going to use a laser to point to the tiles and explain what I'm seeing here. So I'm just going to draw our attention to this first tile. And high school enrollment, the number of students relative to the number of classroom teachers in high school. And our average class size, or rather our average ratio is 22.92 students per classroom teacher. And so in all this, we aren't forgetting our high schools. We also are looking at EA staffing across our high schools and across all of our schools. My dilemma right now is I wish I could make this interactive on a PowerPoint. It was working earlier in my office. I could switch off high school, look at all schools and talk about ratios relative to EAs and have you all believe me. But I can't easily do that. But what I know is when I look at EA staffing and the ratios, if we include the elementary schools, we're closer to 30 students per educational assistant in the school division. It's a smaller number. And another important person on staff that supports students especially when they're experiencing challenges to their independence and autonomy, are student services teachers, SSTs. And so here, if we added elementary schools to the mix, we're closer to 100 students per student services teacher. And so what we're trying to achieve, especially in elementary schools here, is 4 classrooms per student services teacher as a ratio. Again, not perfect. How it expresses itself across 40 schools, soon 41 schools, as the Secretary Treasurer has observed. But all important data that informs the budget. Now, when we're talking about EAs and student services teachers, we're talking about students and their needs. And how do we allocate resources relative to those needs? So I'm sharing with you tonight a report that colleagues who work with me in LRSD in the room haven't yet seen. But what I have to say is, without colleagues in this room and all the work they've put into this, I'd have nothing to show. So first, if I'm able to show any of this, it's because of the incredible dedication of staff in this room, wanting to describe to themselves and the community they serve the needs in our schools in very detailed ways. And so this is a first for us in LRSD, and I dare say a first in schools in Manitoba and Canada, because we went looking across Canada to develop this tool. And we had to come up with it on our own. And what this report is showing us is our latest framework to understanding student needs in our classrooms and how best to support those needs. And knowing that those needs express themselves in a dynamic way. What we believe about students is all students are on a journey of independence, of autonomy, relative to their learning, relative to their well-being, all students. And so this has to be very dynamic to capture that reality. And the work of the supports that go to meet the needs of students that are struggling with independence and autonomy have to lead to independence and autonomy. And so what this report is showing us is that as of today, over 2,057, over 2,000 students, 2,057 students to be specific, have some really important needs that need to be met. And when we look at, although we're describing it in a way that has never been made as explicit as it is here, what we know is that we've been describing this to ourselves for some time, and that in the year just before the pandemic, the number of students with these significant needs was 1,000. And so that's our lived reality. You hear about it all the time. You hear about it in local news, national news, and global news reporting on education. Students have significant needs coming out of the pandemic, and we need to respond to them. We can't sit idly by. And so we're making incremental investments to respond to the diversity of these needs. And so this explains the staffing increases. Why we're going to add 13.5 FTE to elementary schools to maintain that class size, if I'm honest, we're not going to be able to improve it by much because we're a growing school division. We're adding 5.6 FTE to high schools. And we are giving ourselves, it's not so much an addition, but built into the budget is a teaching contingency. Because what we know about our growth is it's challenging to predict because of late it is surprisingly fast. And student services play an important role. That last bit of data I offered is telling us a lot about how supporting teachers and supporting students is not just about EAs, but it's about so much more. And having a healthy complement of student services in schools is necessary. So we're proposing an addition of 9 FTE. And again, we will not have solved the problem, but we will have inched our way closer to a solution. All of these teachers and educational assistants without clinical supports are also left wondering. And so we have some very, very important staff that we value in LRSD, psychologists, social workers, occupational therapists, speech pathologists. We're going to add 4.45 of that staffing complement in this proposed budget. Some of this staff will support a new therapeutic space in LRSD. So right now in LRSD, we are entirely dependent on outside organizations, some that exist in other school divisions like Coach and Winnipeg School Division, to support us when those needs we talked about express themselves in some in ways that are so significant that a child, a young person, needs time away and needs time with some very specialized staff to see their journey through to independence and autonomy. And so rather than rely on spaces that keep telling us they have no room for us, we need to build it here in LRSD. And we believe that our literacy journey, an important support to that journey, are our teacher librarians. Not all school systems believe in this role, but we to this day continue to believe in its importance. And we're adding to that complement, because for too long now, because of austerity, we've not looked after that staffing complement relative to growth. We have to continue to do the good job we're doing of ensuring our leadership teams grow relative to student growth and staff growth. We're adding 0.5 vice principal. We want to grow our Indigenous education team by 1 FTE to see the language program expand. We're on a journey to have all students K to 3 in LRSD be exposed and celebrate and learn Indigenous languages in our schools. And again, incrementally, we're making progress. For our students who come to us from war-torn countries, come to us having had to be out of school for some time, and have those additional burdens be a part of their journey in learning a new language and a new culture. We've had lots of supports in high schools, but we've got to find the wherewithal to grow that support in our middle schools. So we're adding an expertise, a specialized 1 FTE to support teachers in middle years to help students develop their proficiency in the English language. Because of the austerity we've lived for some time in public education and LRSC, we've had to make some sacrifices. Have less supports available to teachers in the arts and phys ed, and we're bringing those supports back in the form of a support teacher for arts teachers, and in K-8, that's everyone, not just when you think of the arts broadly, and for our teachers in high school, and to see hopefully more rich programming in the arts and healthy living and phys ed in our schools. All of that teaching staff is supported by important educational workers. I've learned to refer to our non-teaching staff as educational workers, because that's all inclusive, that's everyone. A teacher is an educational worker, but board office staff that I see in this room are educational workers. Although I was once a teacher, I'm now a superintendent, I'm an educational worker. We could refer to all this complement as educational workers. So our educational assistants, we're not going to meet all the needs teachers are expressing, but we're going to add 18 FTE in this draft budget. We're a growing school division again, and we need the support of our custodial staff that play an incredibly important role in the quality of the lived physical spaces we learn in and work in. We need to add to our clerical complement. So all of this is directly supporting schools. The library assistants that support our teacher librarians, maintenance staff. This specifically is maintenance staff that is going to help us to just move things around specifically, and actually will end up being a cost savings. We've determined that it's going to cost us less to hire people to move stuff than ask others to do it for us. And in staff services, we have an important strategic action of staff wellness that we want to see expand and evolve. I believe a lot of what I just talked about will go a long way to support staff wellness, but we are going to also dedicate a staff person on staff services to to build capacity, especially in folks like me in leadership, to better support staff wellness in schools. And finally, I would like, senior leadership team would like an Indigenous elder at the table. We want to add a senior leadership team position that is an Indigenous elder at the LRSD table. Like Jamie mentioned, it's about people mostly, but it's also about things. One grotesque inequity in a world facing climate catastrophe is the fact that for kids and staff in 10 schools, there is no air conditioning. And so we have to find the wherewithal to make the capital investments over time that will get all of our schools retrofitted for air conditioning. And so this is the plan, a very reasonable plan. And the board is willing to explore, if our projected expenditures allow, to fast track this plan. But the board is telling me, Mishlik, at the very least, we're committing to getting it done in 6 years. Because we did look at getting it done in 2, getting it done in 4, getting it done in 10. Swimming has come out of the thought exchange as an important new life skill that we would like to see for students. I hope to see lots of creative thinking around all kinds of healthy living opportunities for kids. We're going to pilot in this budget swimming. We have $100,000 set aside. It's going to require a partnership with the city for the pools, for the instructors. We're going to have to see through a pilot how this may impact staff in our schools. Right now, you hear about it. We have staffing challenges, workforce challenges in public education, and they're only getting more significant. Right now, they're expressing themselves in the lack of substitute teachers and EAs to come in to help give a helping hand when folks are away. So we'll have to see how this impacts when schools are already challenged because staff are away due to illness, and how we can navigate all of it. Making an investment in cybersecurity. We've, through the Power School fiasco, and that was out of our control, and what we see happening in other school divisions, we need to heighten our cybersecurity. So there's an important investment here to have an expertise detect and try to prevent, mitigate an attack, and some insurance policies as well when things go wrong. You need to know that the conversation touched on many other elements. The trustees wanted us to consider doing away with student fees. What we know about student fees is that it is a bit of a Pandora's box. What I mean by that is that divisionally, we collect K to 8, approximately $1 million in fees every year. Now we know that due to circumstances, due to poverty, families at times aren't able to pay fees. So we subsidize about 20% of families already in LRSD in K to 8 relative to these fees we collect divisionally. So if we collected from everyone, we'd be collecting a lot more than $1 million. And we talked about doing away with all of these fees, and I know that conversation is going to continue, and a superintendent at some point will be sharing with you on behalf of a board an investment here beyond the investments we're already making. We talked about mentorship for administration, for school administration, and we do a lot. Trustees would like to see more. in the way of that mentorship. It's an essential role of the 4 assistant superintendents and myself in this room to be the mentors to admin. We have other staff that have that responsibility, and trustees would like to see more, but we haven't gone there in this budget. The impacts of climate change, we talked about it beyond air conditioning. We talked about wanting to invest in green technologies. Here, the work is more political than budgetary. We need to politically influence those who are the decision makers relative to deciding on geothermal, deciding on solar panels, to make those investments. We can't make those, even if we wanted to, even if we wanted to budget for them locally, this isn't our decision to make. And we talked about funds for student-led initiatives. So we already support many student-led initiatives. I know local school budgets, money goes directly into the hands of students and their active engagement in the community. We have an Indigenous leadership group that see lots of support for their initiatives. We have our council at the divisional level of high school students, but trustees had ideas about giving even more, and I know that conversation continues as well. Will continue, but those investments aren't, to be clear, aren't part of this budget, this draft budget that we're proposing tonight. A consideration at the board table that is revenue neutral and expenditure neutral is the need for us to find the wherewithal and the courage to develop a before and after school childcare system in LRSD. So that conversation is ongoing, and I hope to see something happen this year, this coming fiscal year, this next budget year, regardless. It's here only because I know how pressing the need is. Having been a part of a journey right now of opening a new school in Sage Creek to serve both Sage Creek and Bonavista. The biggest pain point I'm dealing with right now is before and after school care, and decisions families are making to pull their kid out of French immersion because they're not sure about the before and after school care. So here's what I personally believe. I believe that we have to find a way as a public school system to look after before and after care in that I believe here's the solution is this. Before the bell rings in the morning, the spaces kids occupy after that bell rings has to welcome in kids. And at the end of the day, when the bell rings, the spaces some kids need to occupy after that bell have to be those same spaces they were in just before the bell. And so we've got to work on a system that looks after that and pay for it by just asking parents to pay what they're already paying. And so that's what I hope to see happen in LRSD one day. I can't wait to see it. So, here we have it. We've shared a lot, as succinctly as we could. I'd like to invite our chair, who's joined us, to invite us to this engagement.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. And I'd also like to thank our Secretary Treasurer, Jamie Rudnicki, for all the wonderful work that they've both done. And thank our Superintendent for stepping in for me. I just want to explain myself. I love being a trustee, but my day job is as an attorney. And people think being a lawyer is a glamorous job, but I specialize in going to northern communities. And so that's where I've been for the last 2 days, helping people up there. I was supposed to land my plane at 3 o'clock, but it's minus 29 and snowing again. So the plane didn't land until just now, and that's also why I'm dressed this way. I have a very lovely blue suit that was waiting for me to change into, but I am wearing something LRSD, so there you go. But again, thank you all for coming. It was a very important evening. and I'm sure you enjoyed all of the information that you've so far heard. The next step now, as we've heard, is to have some discussions and to give all of your feedback to what you've seen and what you think about our draft budget. And remember, it is a draft budget. We're always open to feedback. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming. Thank you.
So they're already responding.
It's up here. Look at this. There you go.
So could
Great
you,
to see.
yeah, so let's invite folks at the table.
Sure.
So I suspect folks online have already contributed some thoughts. But at our tables, if I see some folks have laptops, but you can even just use a phone. If someone at the table could, well, you'll roll the way you want, but if I were at a table right now, I choose one person to listen and put into the form survey what's being shared, the questions, the thoughts. And what we intended to do is respond to just a few later in a little bit. And then with a promise to respond to it all and provide a report back later next week.
Yeah, we'll respond when we can, and we'll collect all this information and feed it back. So are these from
Right now.
these are from
Yeah, so-
online or?
Yeah, online. And so we'll just let people talk for a little bit and enjoy a cookie. Thank you, Marcy. And some coffee or water. Man, did I need water. And enjoy.
Yeah, that's great. to see it all live like that.
Happy to tell you. What are your thoughts and questions?
Say them in front of my children.
No.
Around and everything.
All right, as promised, we're going to bring closure to the evening soon. So we've unmuted, folks online can hear us now. And so we've gathered lots of thoughts, 52 thoughts. And we're not going to go through all 52. What we're going to do is take a look at a few of the first thoughts that have been shared with a promise to read through them all as a senior leadership team and school board and offer back a summary of thoughts shared and a response to those thoughts. So questions or thoughts about the proposed draft budget? For our first thought is 7.5 and 24, now 6.34 and 25. Shocked at the audacity of this budget. Last year we did go bold for full day K, and I'm looking forward to sharing what we're learning from our full day K experience in the coming months. We've got some really good and important data initiatives in the works, and it'll be exciting to share just how transformative this has been for families, for students, for staff. Now there's talk of a new transportation facility when area schools are still without, and in the expected, and then we expect economic challenges. Oh, what happened? Oh, more thoughts are coming in. I'm just going to stay with this thought, and I need to help myself do that. Sorry, bear with me. I just wanted to finish this one. And in the expected economy only challenges, very disappointing. And how this will impact families, costs, supplies, everything. And I know that at the heart of the conversation at the board table with senior leadership are all of these considerations, just how far can we go? How much wherewithal can we allow ourselves relative to what a community can afford? And I believe the board has struck a balance here. We would be close to the increases we're seeing in other divisions right now, school divisions that aren't necessarily seeing the growth we're seeing. Were it not for the percentage, the portion of the percentage increase that is actually the need to furnish a new school. And just how expensive that is. And so, you know, I understand that some might have the perspective we're doing too much, too fast, but I believe we're doing just what we can afford to not continue to lose ground. And so for too long, for too many years, what's happened because of austerity is we've lost ground. And I don't believe, I really believe that our system and other systems, other public systems simply can't afford to start to lose ground again. We have to maintain what we have and start inching our way back to what we once had. And I believe that it is a budget, as one of the comments just made there, it is a budget that focuses on student needs and the contemporary reality we live in. Is the case I'm trying to make, of course. Okay, let me see. I'm not doing very well here. What have I done? I'm going to have someone with more expertise do that for me. Thanks, Clark. I don't know why I've suddenly captured everything accidentally. But here, why don't I read?
What would you like me to do?
Well, I was scrolling down, but I don't think that's what I, oh, that's even better.
Yeah. Somebody never say.
Make it all go away. No,
Yeah, exactly, right?
oh, no stream detected.
Whole thing just. What's forward? Hang on, sorry, my apologies.
And are you open to some questions here on from the floor while we wait for the technology?
Sure, yeah. Would you like to ask a question? Let me bring you the mic.
Actually, sure, if you don't mind. I spent some time putting my thoughts together because I didn't want to monopolize time here, be respectful of everyone else's time. And so I put some thoughts together. And if everyone here would indulge me, I'd like to just simply read it. From what I heard last week at the budget meeting, that from comments from Jamie, when he first introduced a 2.4% increase in operating funding, which results in 3.1 million in additional funding from our provincial partners. Clearly, it doesn't come close to the increase in cost needed to support LRSD's 5% growth of enrollment. And hence the 6.43% proposal this evening here for a tax hike. I have a couple comments. I guess my takeaway from tonight's meeting and from the board meeting I listened in on last week, it's clear that LRSD's probably two greatest challenges is our operating budget and enrollment pressures, if I understand things correctly. So, as our board of trustees and senior leadership team move towards approving the budget for the 25-26 school year, I'd like to share two recommendations for consideration. Number one, international students. The international student program is an important revenue stream for LRSD. The annual student fees of $13,000 has enabled LRSD to fund projects and maintain a rainy day fund. According to the dashboard, LRSD is presently hosting 225 international students. In recent years, I recall as many as 500 international students, the equivalent of one full school. International students are a contributing factor in LRSD's enrollment pressures. It's imperative we prioritize space in our schools for LRSD students before accommodating international students and building a rainy day fund. The delicate balance of revenue stream versus the capacity in our schools needs to be examined. Number two, my second recommendation for discussion and consideration at the board and senior leadership team level. LRSD's single track French immersion program. For folks that may not fully understand, French immersion programming does exist throughout the province, but LRSD is the only division with the single track French immersion policy. LRSD does not support a dual track model and has chosen to segregate its English and French immersion students in a single track model under separate roofs. Single track French immersion takes community schools out of community, prohibiting many students from attending the school that is geographically closest to their residence. Single track French immersion takes community schools out of community, prohibiting many students from walking or cycling to school. Single track French immersion denies neighborhood kids from going to school together, building valuable friendships and creating a better sense of community. Taking community schools out of community results in unnecessary transportation costs, busing K-6 students who reside more than 1.6 kilometers from school. The segregation of English and French immersion students has also handcuffed the division's ability to respond to enrollment pressures by simply redrawing catchment boundaries. On behalf of LRSD taxpayers, I ask this board to closely manage the intake of international students and examine the financial impact of LRSD's single-track French immersion policy. On a final note, LRSD's enrollment growth may be overstated on the dashboard. it appears that international students have been included in calculating year-over-year enrollment growth. International student enrollment is controllable and should be excluded from this calculation. I asked the senior leadership team and the board to ensure LRSD's enrollment growth is not artificially inflated and is accurately represented on the dashboard for community and our provincial partners. Thank you.
Thanks for those observations, Ina. And we will ensure that we consider as a board and a senior leadership team your suggestions and requests for details around the data we share. So I commit to looking at what you're proposing and getting back to you and whomever else is interested relative to the costs of single track French immersion and single track English programs, the cost per pupil, and expanding on with you the reasons for the approach in LRSD and the results we see relative to that approach with respect to French immersion programming. I know that when it comes to the international student program, as you say, it's indeed in our control, and we are seeing far fewer international students in our schools because of many factors, one of them being our capacity to welcome into our schools international students. And so on everything you've observed, we'll have more conversation and we'll get back to you for sure.
May I add another comment about the decision that was made last week at the board meeting regarding the $10 million loan? May I?
Sure, I'll let you have one
I
more
mean,
comment.
if anyone else on the floor, you're putting your hand up, I certainly don't want to take anyone else's time. I guess
This is the budget. What I'm hearing, so we have enrollment pressures, we have a limited operating budget, which we now have to go to community and ask for a tax hike. And I fully support all of the, when we look at equity and we're talking about air conditioning initiatives, very disappointed to see that it's going to take 6+ more years. I think that's really an important initiative. So then help me understand, last week, this board approved pursuing a $3 million property, St. Anne's Road, south of the perimeter. They've also approved approaching the province for a $10 million loan. This loan will, as I understand, purchase that property, which will become our future bus depot. It will be also developed into an Indigenous land-based learning facility. And also that $10 million will wrap up upgrades at our 2 divisional offices. So I think most community, if you're asking them for a 6.43% increase, I think most folks are happy to support our infrastructure, our students. We're heading into tariffs. Costs are going up. Is a $10 million loan right now the best use of our funds? I look at that bus depot, it's going to be south of the perimeter. We're going to be incurring a lot of additional fuel costs because where that property is, just to bring the buses into our community. I'm concerned when we have storms, when the perimeter shut down, will our entire bus fleet be immobile because of where we've chosen? Don't get me wrong, I think our Jamie articulated last week that it sounds like this new bus facility or bus depot, I'm gonna call it a bus depot. You've been looking for one for 10 years, and I can appreciate that. You're looking for a better property. But is this the right time? And then to also tell community that you are part of that $10 million, you are going to upgrade our 2 divisional offices when there's so many great needs in our schools. I think we really need to take the stance of students first. What are the interest costs in servicing that $10 million loan, that debt? Does this make sense at this time? I'm really struggling with how what we presented tonight and what our priorities are and why is all of a sudden that the land-based learning, I also would question, I think that we're sort of mimicking what, I believe it's Seven Oaks, is it called Economic Center? I don't know how to pronounce it. So as the taxpayer, I would think, is this a new trend? Is every school division going to want to purchase a comparable facility? Can there not be any sharing? So that we can minimize, we can optimize the taxpayer's dollar. Does every school division need an Indigenous land-based learning facility? Can we share one? Can we share costs? There's just a lot of what I said. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks for those questions. They're all great questions. They're deserving of an answer. And they're the questions we're asking ourselves, Ina. So the land purchase is a proposal. We're proposing borrowing dollars, and we need permission to borrow those dollars for some infrastructure investments. Other school divisions have had permission to borrow a whole lot more. And we nothing's come to fruition yet. And the questions you're asking yourself are the questions we are asking ourselves. And none of this will come to pass without that scrutiny coming from city government, from provincial governments, to see if it's a viable proposal. So everything you've said, Ina, is at the heart of the exploration right now, relative to that project.
But you do appreciate though that community was not allowed to weigh in on that because of our board procedure. So that I suspect this property came up suddenly and you needed to pivot.
Yeah.
But it became an action item last week on the board meeting and it was voted on and supported.
Yeah.
The public question period is at the end of the board meeting.
Yeah. And what the board voted on was allowing us to explore the possibilities.
But
so
yeah,
again, full transparency.
Community was not allowed to question and weigh in prior.
You are now. And so we're open to dialogue with the community, and this was a forum allowing for that. Now, mindful of everyone's time, it's 8:15. I promised I'd look at a few of the comments or questions. And then I promise to all those who've offered a comment, offered a question, we'll get back to you with full transparency. And so we're just gonna read a few more. You can read them along with me. French immersion must remain single track. A desire for betterment of STEM education. Why is that not being funded? And here again, STEAM, the need for science, technology, engineering, math, the arts being an integral part of the curricula we build and offer students and co-design with students is very much at the heart of the journey in our schools. And we need to just do a better job of letting folks know the incredible work that is happening in our schools. Overall, a dissatisfaction with the budget and an extremely burdensome tax increase. And so this is it, right? This is the dilemma elected officials are confronted with, and that I, at this local level of government, try to navigate alongside. And that is weighing, what are we going to do to maintain and manage the common good we have built over generations? What are we going to do to expand on that common good relative to a growing community? And past generations have been able to make incredible investments that we enjoy today. And what I'll observe is for some reason, over the last few decades, we seem unable to find that same courage and belief in the common good. And so those are the dynamics that play at the board table when 9 trustees come together to decide politically, collectively, where to find the balance, what to ask of the community. Thanks so much for joining us tonight on behalf of the board, on behalf of senior leadership, on behalf of staff in LRSD, students and families in LRSD. I so appreciate people's engagement and support, and we'll continue the conversation as the board deliberates and decides on its budget for March 15th. Thanks, everyone.